Okay, you're watching this video because either you have a problem with your fuel delivery system or your powerboat, or you're thinking of buying a powerboat, a used powerboat. And let's start with the fuel tank. And most fuel tanks in modern powerboats are built in and they're underneath the deck. So before you buy a boat, you better make sure the fuel tank's good. Otherwise, you'll be getting a sander and you'll be sanding away the gel coat to find where the plates come together. And if you got a good sander, you'll sand right through and pull up the deck and then replace the fuel tank. A lot of work. And the fuel tank I had in this boat was made by a company called Inca, I-N-C-A, and they made a wonderful fuel tank. And older powerboats develop pinholes in the fuel pickup tube, and if the fuel tank has a replaceable tube, you can replace it and be on your happy way. However, the Inca tank had a replaceable one, but I couldn't get it out to save my life. So I had to replace the tank. Well, on this tank, after I replaced it, I had a gasket fail right here on the fuel sender, or fuel. This is a Moeller type, Reed type fuel level sender, and the gasket failed and let all kinds of contamination get in the tank. So I had to pump it out. But you're supposed to have an anti-siphon valve right here. So I need to add one. So I got to get this elbow out and then replumb this, adding the anti-siphon valve. Now, if you have a problem with an obstruction in an anti-siphon valve, you'll get low fuel volume. So this line goes from here to the fuel filter, and I'll show you that here next. There's the fuel filter. This is a 10 micron water separating fuel filter. So the next thing you would do is to replace this filter and check it for contamination. Then you would go to the fuel pump and remove the sediment bowl, check it for contamination and change the filter in there. And then the carburetor in the Mercarb, there's a filter screen at the fuel inlet. So what I've seen other people do is they'll take the line from the fuel tank, which is this one going forward through the bulkhead, which is this line here, take it loose and suck on it and see if they can get fuel. I don't like to suck on it, so I use an electric fuel pump, an ignition protected fuel pump, and that works pretty good. And I pump out some gas and I use it in my farm equipment. So this is the basic idea. And if you don't have ample fuel volume and the right fuel pressure at the carburetor inlet, you have to ferret out why. Usually the fuel pump's okay. Very seldom do I ever see a failed fuel pump. Like never. But it does have a tube that goes from the fuel pump, a clear tube, that is a special material. I've just got basic plastic here, but there is a special material that's clear. And the idea is if the diaphragm fails, it pumps the gas right into the carburetor and you get real rich. So the gas doesn't go in the bilge, it goes into the carburetor. That's a safety feature that marine carburetors have, because everybody's always saying, well, what's this for? And it's a safety feature. Just like your anti-siphon valve is a safety feature. And I've got this loose, this box for maintenance purposes. I can pull this forward and we get a real good look at the fuel tank. And this is the pair that goes to the helm for the fuel level. And all my connections, I don't use crimp connectors. I twist the wires together and solder, and then use at least 2 coats of paintable vinyl insulation tape, and then wrap it with regular tape, number 33 Scotch. So anyway, to see if I have gas, I should be able to suck on this right there, take it loose and suck on it and get gas in my mouth. But I don't like to do that. So instead, I connect the fuel pump up to my electric ignition protected fuel pump onto the output of the filter, which is this connector here. You can see the arrow out. And I connect it over to the battery, and I pump gas out and check it for contamination. But if I have any contamination, you'll see it when you dump the filter. So we'll do that next. I have a new filter, I just got it. But I'll change this filter later after I check see if I can suck gas in my mouth. And that's on one of the, well, how do you know? I say, well, suck. What about suck don't you understand? I don't like to suck gas in my mouth, and I don't think it's safe to do it. It may have environmental or detrimental health issues. But if you can't suck gas out of the tank, you ain't going to get nothing else going right with this engine. And you know, most people, they take their power boat to the shop, and the shop does all this. And when they tell them it was a problem with the boat, they're like, what do you mean? What can be wrong with the boat? Well, there's a lot that goes into the fuel delivery, and this is the basics. It comes out of the tank, through the filter, to the fuel pump, through another filter, and up to the carburetor through a strainer. So any of those could be obstructed, or contamination in the fuel like water or other debris. In this case, when that gasket failed, I had a nightmare scenario. I didn't know the gasket was leaking, so I took the boat to a gas station, and it's a 28-gallon tank, and by the time I noticed, I had 35 gallons pumped. Where'd the other gas go? It went in the bilge, because it was leaking there and gushing out. So I didn't know, but I had the bunghole at the back of the engine was clogged with leaves. So I didn't even see anything exiting the boat. So I had all this gas in there. And as soon as I pulled away from the pump, I had the battery on, so that was before I installed that switch where I could kill the whole thing. So I had power, and the ignition, the bilge kicked on, and next thing I know, I had raw gas, high volume, squirting out the discharge onto the side of the road, which was lucky, because the original discharge from years ago, I had the discharge on the other side, and I'm not using this discharge anymore. But had it discharged on this side, it would have gone to right to the car coming the opposite way down the highway. Would have been a terrible disaster. Which brings me back to boat insurance. Don't own a boat without insurance. Bad things can happen. You want to be covered. Alright, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the line from the tank off and see if I get fuel coming out and how much resistance there is. And then I'll change the filter and we'll go from there. So, baby steps. But these are all things you ought to do even before you buy a used powerboat, is make sure your fuel delivery system is in good nick. As the British say, in good nick. Good shape. Because if you're not getting fuel to the fuel injection or carburetor, your engine isn't going to be running that great. And you can see I got my spark plug tester on here. Because if your engine doesn't start, that's a whole nother video. We'll get into that another day. This is a little out of sequence, but I hooked up the pump here, the electric, and I'm pumping right out of the fuel tank, and there was like no resistance, absolutely no resistance to where it's connected. When I sucked on it, it was zero resistance without the anti-siphon valve, and it was even free flowing. And I've got my gauge to measure the connector size, and I got a plug. It's like it was free flowing because there's my little pump, ignition protected pump connected to the batteries, or the battery. But because the front of the boat is elevated, the fuel was going to the back, and I'm filling up my tractor, getting fresh fuel. Oh, it's full. Okay, gotta stop it. Let me stop it. It's overflowing. And this is ignition protected, little tiny pump I got at the auto supply place, ignition protected. And on my prior video I give you the model number because I was able to read it. I don't have enough sun right now. So anyway, this is the rig, and that's a special line for the, but this is the wrong diameter. Man, it took forever for that to come in. I forget the name of it. Somebody on the internet told me what it's called, but that's what I need for the line from here to there. But anyway, we're going to take this loose, and where it connects to the tank. See? And then we very gently lift it up so we get the gas out of the line, and of course disconnect everything from the battery. I use alligator clips for that, and it's fused and ignition protected, and this was like $15 for this little tiny pump, and I forget the name of it, but anyway, any electric fuel pump will work fine. And let me do this without falling. But so this is a fuel tank connection, straight out of the tank, and it's just unscrews. And this is where I put my anti-siphon valve. Okay, anti-siphon valve. And this is what the connector looks like, and that looks probably like 1/2 inch. So take my gauge, and I measured it. It's 5/8. 5/8 on the gauge. These gauges are really handy. I bought this online from, I don't know, 3/4. 5/8 is too small. I think it's 3/4. So since this was free flowing, it isn't now because I pumped some gas out of it. But having some handy, a kit with plugs comes in handy, because I want to block off this port overnight, and I'm guessing that probably one of these blue 3/4 inch will probably fit it, and that's too big. It's too big. I gotta go next size smaller, and I got some black ones here too that'll probably work, but it's the reason why I keep this kit full of plugs. You never know when you're gonna need to block off a port. But I don't want to leave this overnight with this connection to the tank, because that's where the pickup tube is. And on this tank, it's not replaceable. You cannot replace it. You'd have to cut it out and have an artisan, an expert on restoring fuel tanks, to weld in a new pickup tube. But this is what goes wrong with fuel tanks over the years. They get pinholes right at the level where the fuel is hitting the pickup tube, and they eat through the pickup tube, either plastic or metal, doesn't matter. And this is a fuel tank made by Sunshine Marine, but that gasket that failed, I have no idea where they got the gasket from, but I meant to call them and talk to them about it, but I never got around to it. So but that was a nightmare scenario for me. Alright, well the next segment we're going to do is we're going to install the anti-siphon valve and then check the suction. And where I checked it is I pulled this loose here and I just sucked on it with my mouth and the fuel came right up. There was no resistance whatsoever, nothing, not a nothing. Alright, well I'm going to put this in here overnight because I can't get the right size plug. And I got to be real careful and don't drop things, and in the bilge, this was painted black. I did white gel coat last time because I need it light in there so I can see what I'm doing. And I need to rework this this float switch. It's facing the wrong way. It needs to be facing towards the rear instead of towards the front because I'm getting leaves stuck underneath it. Anyway, live and learn. Die and forget it all. That's the old saying. Please hit the like button. Smash that like button if you're learning anything. But you start with the fuel tank, then you move to the filter, the next filter. If you want to skip all that, you can go straight to the fuel volume. And fuel volume is how many pints per minute. So you take a stopwatch and you let the thing crank over with the ignition disabled by pulling the wire. You disable the ignition and you let her crank so she don't start, and see how much fuel you get in the mayonnaise jar, in the spaghetti jar, clear glass jar, whatever it is, and then take a measurement, do your calculation, and figure out how many gallons per hour you're getting. And you have to know a little math to do that, but normally if you fill it up pretty quick, you can rest easy that you have an ample volume. If you have an obstruction or a problem or a filter, you're just not going to get the volume right away. You're going to crank and it's just going to come out in drips and drabs instead of gushing. You want gushing, you want good volume. Anyway, smash that like button. Okay, YouTube fans and social media and do-it-yourself enthusiasts. As you see, it's another day, and this is a video log, not a do-it-yourself. So format's a little different. Video log, a vlog is you see the pimples and all. And today I tried to go to Dalton Marine and buy a anti-siphon valve and the piece of plumbing I needed, and couldn't because it's Sunday and they're normally open on Sundays, limited hours, but because of the China virus, it came from China. Oh, that's politically incorrect to call it China virus, but okay, what do you want to call it? COVID-19, is that the socially acceptable name for this baloney that we have to deal with, and the economic impact and all that? But I guess. Anyway, I couldn't get it there, so I went to Advanced Auto Parts because I needed a battery for my lawn tractor, and I know they got good ones there. It was a little pricier than I thought for a lawnmower battery. I thought it should be like 30 bucks. It would end up being double that. But it was a good quality one, so with a good warranty, so I bought it. And it's like 450 cranking amps, which for a 25 horsepower engine, that's a lot. But anyway, I put it in the tractor and everything fit, so I'm happy. But after that, I went to Home Hardware in Homestead, and one of the owners helped me because I took all of my gauges here and I was trying to figure out what thread it was for the 90 degree, and nothing worked until I got to the plumbing supply section at Home Hardware, and I found this thing here, that doodad there. Anyway, that's 3/8 inch on the package, if I can read it. It's made in China, it's brass, It's a street elbow made in China. It's 3/8 inch NPT, whatever. NPT doesn't match any of my gauges here that I bought online, and this one's got a dandy thread gauge for both metric and SAE, which is American. But anyway, that's this is a plumbing thread. So I bought this, and I couldn't get the anti-siphon valve, so I gave up on anti-siphon valve, and I put my boat back together. And next thing I'm going to do is pull the water separating fuel filter loose. The other day I pumped 6 gallons directly out of the tank, and I did what I told you not to do. I sucked on it, and I had like no resistance. I got a mouthful of gas, no bubbles. So that pretty well tells me that I'm pretty happy with my fuel tank. So if you were testing your boat, I'm not telling you do not get a mouthful of gas, but there should be no resistance sucking right out of the tank with anything, electric fuel pump. Anyway, I pumped out 6 gallons because my tractor needed gas, and I used that cute little electric pump that I'll show you in the next video segment or so. But I got 6 gallons out, and then I put it back together without the anti-siphon valve, and I ordered the anti-siphon valve online. I ordered, let me switch the camera back to my face again. Sorry for my big old face, but I'm not going to bother with the tripod today. I feel like I want to get work done, just not talk about it. Anyway, I ordered Moeller, which is pretty much good marine. Moeller Marine. They do a lot of fuel tank stuff. And I think it's a Moeller Reed type fuel sender on there, on my fuel tank. Anyway, I ordered their brass anti-siphon valve, 3/8 inch MPT. And it says it's going to take 2 weeks to get here. But like everything online during the virus recovery period, you know, they say it's going to be 3 weeks or a month, and it comes in a week later. And it's hot out there today, out in the Grove. So we're going to go outside in a second, and we're going to start and run the engine. But the next thing I'm going to do before I run the engine is pull the water separating fuel filter off, check for any contamination. There should be none, because I've done this about 10 times already. Pumped all the gas out, filled it back up. I've changed the filters. I put additives. I'm using Startron, Marvel Mystery. I'm trying to do everything I can to get the contamination out of this tank that the failed gasket caused. And I'd have to dig through my box of stuff to, I didn't throw it away, but later in another video segment I'll show you the failed gasket. And I don't know if the gasket came with the Moeller sender, Moeller Marine, or if it was something Sunshine had in there, because it was a Sunshine Marine tank, and Sunshine makes tanks for everybody. So, and I haven't called them yet to talk to their management, but I had used some Teflon tape on this brass connector that I had just a 90 with a barb before, not that elbow, but the one that's in the boat, and that was so I had something to use until I could get an anti-siphon valve installed, and I did that in 2013. So it's time to put an anti-siphon valve on it, because I don't even know what the damn thing does, but I know it's required by federal law. So it's supposed to stop, well, the anti-siphon valve is if your line comes loose and lays in the bilge, that it doesn't fill the bilge of the boat with gas. That's what the anti-siphon, well, I think that's what it's for. I don't know. It's a check valve, and it only lets fuel come out of the tank. So I don't know, I don't understand the purpose of it. But anyway, it's got to have one, so I got to put it on. Anyway, post a comment if you know, can enlighten me why we have to have anti-siphon valves. But I got the brass fitting now. Next I'm going to go out and I'm going to pull that filter loose and dump it and see if there's any water in it, any contaminant. I'm sure there isn't, but you know how it is, just to make sure. And they'll give me a cup of gas to throw in the carburetor if it doesn't want to start. This 3.7 is real cold natured. It started the other day, but it was only after I took the flame arrestor off and threw a cup of gas into it. And never crank it with the, I did it once with the flame arrestor off, and there's a backfire, and next thing you know, you got a fire in the carburetor. And fire in the boat, and keep your fire bottles handy. That's, I haven't said that enough in the earlier segments. I always have fire bottles handy in case I get a fire, because I don't want this boat to burn. I don't. I put way too much money and time, and you know, do it yourself saves you so much money that, you know, whatever I would have spent to have things professionally done. I have had some stuff done professionally. Anyway, next we'll pull the fuel filter, and so hang with me, guys. Please smash that like button, and I gotta hit pause to stop the camera. Okay, I got it back together again. Got the clamp, and but I didn't use Teflon tape this time. I'm gonna call Moeller Marine and see what they recommend, or Sunshine Marine, and see if there's any, you know, maybe blue Permatex Loctite or something. Because I don't like using the Teflon because it ends up being in the carburetor. You know, but the filter ought to stop it. Anyway, next we'll take the filter off and dump it. That'll be the next thing. Okay, it took me a minute, but I got my tools, and got to get this off now. And this yellow line back here is Tygon, and it's the wrong diameter for that hose I want to replace, but that's supposed to be super duper for fuel. So we'll get this old filter off. I hate denting it, so I usually put a new one on if it's any age at all. I like fresh filters because you never know if these are clogged or not. And this is Marapac 10 micron. Somebody was asking, oh, what's the best kind to get? I'm like, whatever kind you like, dude. Alright, the wind was blowing pretty damn good today, so I got it gas all over me. So I'm going to wait for it to evaporate. But this gas looks good, it smells good, there's no water. No water I can see in the bottom. So this fuel filter is Marapac, and this is part number 7-0860. And that's the key thing about these filters, is you replace them all the time, so you want to make sure it's one you can buy and that it's cheap enough. I need to put a little motor oil on the seal before I put this back on to do it right. Oh boy. And so anyway, if it doesn't start, I dump this into I take the cover off the carburetor and the flame arrestor and dump it, and then put the flame arrestor back on and then crank it. Sometimes these points get a little rusty and I got to clean those up with a points file. I'm planning on going to pointless, but I haven't done it yet. Everything takes time, and I'm a busy guy. So anyway, smash that like button, and I'm going to put this filter back on, I think. I got a new one, just came in the mail, but I'm going to put this one back on until I feel the need to change it. That one's only about a month old. So, anyway. Okay, I put some drops of motor oil on here. And this 3-in-1 oil, motor oil, SA820. Put it on the seal, and okay, and I spun the filter back on. And this motor oil, this 3-in-1 motor oil, is really good stuff to have around. And you hear me grunting and groaning. This is why you pay the guys so much to work on your engine, because it's hard work getting in and out of these boats. Oh, man. But anyway, this engine box I built out of Coosa board, Blue Water 26 Coosa board, and the interior is 1-inch H80 Divinycell. Strong like bull. Good strong box. So I got the water on and turned the battery on. Topped off the batteries the other day, and always check your coolant level, because these 3.7 Mercury's like to, they got a seal that likes to leak, and so you always want to top that off or make sure you got enough. The motor oil, the oil pans rot out, so you got enough motor oil. Check that every time before you crank up, otherwise you may suffer dire consequences. And of course the power steering fluid, make sure you got enough in there. Alright, and we're going to come over here and hit the throttle, but make sure we get the ignition on. I'm going to leave it at idle at first and just crank it and see what happens. Oh, it starts right up. I haven't run this in about a week, so the fact it started right up is pretty cool. I think I got it almost right. This is amazing, because normally when I change the fuel filter, it's fuel starved. Anyway, we'll put it into gear, see what happens. Put it in gear, it's forward now. Yay! I'm going to retime this engine again. You see it goes into reverse. Engine's ice cold, so it comes up to 160 degrees. When it's up at 160, that's when you want the thermostat to regulate. And some people say, well, not take out the thermostat. Well, heat is power. You don't want the thing too hot and you don't want it too cold. You want it 160 at operating. So anyway, I showed you no contamination in the fuel, and my glass jar of fuel still sitting over there. And a lot of people have fuel volume and delivery problems, and you know, it's usually right at the tank you can't draw, or at the fuel filter. And past that, you've got the fuel pump on the engine, either mechanical or electric, depending on which engine you have. And there should be a sediment bowl on the fuel pump, and there's a filter in there. And if you got garbage in there, you got to clean that out too. And then there's a fuel screen on the carburetor. But I'm not going to show you all that stuff until we get the new anti-siphon valve in, and we make sure that it starts as nice as it does here. And I've got a switch over there for battery 1 or battery 2 or both, and it's a make before break. Now this is a trailer boat, so I actually have the whole system where I can turn everything off. If the boat's kept on the water, you want the bilge pumps to stay on or energized, at least one of them. And I've got two separate bilge systems on here. I've got one that's low volume. Originally it was 500 GPM, but that's not enough, so I went with 1500 on the standard system. And then the new system, this is a totally automatic, has its own sensor built in, and that's 2000 GPM. Or was that the other way around? One of them's automatic, this one's automatic, and that one I can manually bypass it, and it's got a float switch. The float switch is facing the wrong way, and some leaves got in it and kept it on, so I need to get in there and reverse the position of the switch. and I'll probably do that today because it cooled off enough. Man, it's been raining for 2 days, and I haven't been able to get any work done outside for the last 2 days. And I'll turn that switch off, and we're probably much done until I get the anti-siphon valve. And then when the siphon valve comes in, we'll go through this again, and then I'll show you fuel pressure and fuel volume at the carburetor inlet. And it doesn't matter if it's fuel injection or, you know, you have to have ample volume of so many gallons per minute, whatever the spec is for your engine. And you have to have fuel pressure, whatever the spec is. A standard mechanical is like 6 psi, and some fuel injections are 60 psi, something like that. Boy, this thing sure starts nice. And this one does not have the hang-on alternator. This one has the CDI electronics rectifier regulator and heavy-duty stator and the rotor, which is the factory setup, but I don't use factory parts because the factory parts suck compared to the aftermarket. Just turn the batteries off. And as far as the water separating fuel filter, any one you like. I think Rancor makes some cool ones, and some of them have a little place at the bottom where you can see the water, but that would, you know, to me, that's overkill. Just having a spin-on filter, I think, is good enough. And the oil filter, I've always run Fram, but nobody likes Fram for the 3.7 liter. And of course, Mercruiser makes their own oil filter, and there's 20 other makers like Wix and WIX, and I don't know what I got on here now. And I even had a Mallory. I think I went back to Quicksilver, went back to Mercury Marine. Yeah, got Mercury Marine. And I got a new seawater elbow on here made by Bar that I bought. It's actually a Sierra, but I think Bar makes it, and Osco are the only two companies that make it, unless this one came from China. And the flapper I replaced. You can't replace the flappers often enough. Once a year I like to take the elbow off and change that gasket, because if it stays on too long, it starts eating and corroding into the aluminum exhaust, and that thing's $1,500. So if I change the gasket once a year, then I don't have to deal with that. And I check the flapper when I pull the elbow. And people ask me about the starter. This one is an Arco Marine aluminum racing, and I had to call technical support at Arco to get the right one. They're in Pensacola, Florida. And some people say really bad things about Arco Marine, but I don't know. I mean, Arco Marine's been around forever, and I've always had really good luck with Arco Marine. And the batteries, I go with 500 amp hour starter batteries, not the dual purpose, not the AGM. I mean, those are all a waste of money, dude, because these work fine, these 500 cranking amps. And, you know, I mark them 1 and 2, and the date installed, so I know how old they are. And I have them where they can be switched. I didn't have the switch for years, but I like the switch. It's very convenient. But the switch has to be a make before break. And this one was, I think the switch was like 40 bucks. And it wasn't that hard to install, but the cabling, I went with really good marine quality cables, and the cabling ended up being like 80 bucks or 100 bucks for just the cables. So between that and the switch, you know, about $150 for the improvement plus the wiring. But the AGM batteries have a different charge point. The float voltage on them is different. It's lower. So if you use this electrical system with AGM, you'll actually fry the batteries and fry your charging system. So don't do it. Stay with flooded cell batteries. Flooded cell. F-L-O-O-D-E-D. Flooded cell. And go with the starter battery. Don't go with the dual purpose or the trolling. I mean, those batteries have different internals, and they're just not as durable, and they fail more often than your standard starting battery. And on most power boats, all you really need is a starter battery. I mean, you might sit in your boat listening to your radio for a day before you need the power of a dual purpose battery or a trolling battery. I mean, don't go crazy with batteries. Buy the El Cheapo. A good quality El Cheapo. I mean, these are gold standard batteries, and these are, oh, where'd I buy these? I bought this at Advanced Auto Part, and these are, but they're starting type, CarQuest. Yeah, CarQuest. And the people always want to give me the more expensive. I don't want the expensive batteries. It's, this is a 4-cylinder engine. 500 cold cranking amps is all you need. So more, if you go with a Group 24 battery and you go with 800 or 1,000 cranking amps, it's overkill. You don't need it, and you're paying for it, and it's less reliable because they got to, in a Group 24 battery, they got to pack those plates closer together and they short out. So you don't want 800 or 1,000 amp hours. And for years I used Group 24 battery, or 27, and that's fine because that's a bigger battery. But a Group 27 with 500 cranking amps, I mean, you might as well go with a Group 24 and save some money. Because the Group 27 is more expensive than the Group 24. It's a bigger battery, and bigger means more money. Alright, hope you liked the video log. This is not a do-it-yourself. This is a video log. Next thing I'm going to do is retime the engine, I think. I want to put this distributor oriented like it shows on the factory, with the wire, that number 1 wire facing a different way. Let me look at that right now. Let's see, how do I have it right now? Number 1 cylinder on the factory book is going to be with this in the front. So this has got to go another 90 degrees. But if I do that, then this yellow wire, the point wire, will be coming out in the back, and I don't really want that. So I think I'm going to leave it to where it is, because it's perfectly timed now at 4 degrees. I put a timing light on it the other day, and I rebuilt this carburetor myself. It's a 2-barrel Mercarb, and it came out really nice. So I think I'm going to leave it alone. I'd like to put it in the water this week, take it out to Homestead Bayfront, but I have to call the dockmaster, see if the people all weekend long, they're out here with these stupid loud motorcycles and ATVs. Like, come on, people live out here. We don't need to hear all that noise. But what are you going to do? People love noise, I guess. So, I don't know, I guess it's ready for the next sea trial. I just need to put the couple of screws that hold the box in place on either side, put those in, and I should be ready for the next sea trial. So smash that like button, people, and thank you, subscribers, and tell your friends about this forward, share a link. Thank you. Bye. Hello, my name is Dennis Sietsma, Dennis John Sietsma. I am in Homestead, Florida, in the Redland farming area, which is northwest of Homestead and Florida City, which are at the very end of the Florida Turnpike before you go to the Florida Keys. I am a do-it-yourself enthusiast, and I noticed a lot of posts in the powerboat forums on social media about problems with boats, powerboats. Usually small powerboats, say 18 to 30 foot, something like that. And they have a lot of trouble with fuel contamination. And this is not a do-it-yourself video, although I do some do-it-yourself videos. It's more of a video log to document what I did on my project boat. But it's a big problem with powerboats for contaminated fuel or fuel delivery issues. And most often people have a problem and they don't realize what they really are having an issue with is not the engine or the fuel pump, but with the actual boat itself, with the fuel tank or the anti-siphon valve being restricted or reduced flow. So you do a fuel volume test first, but even before that you replace the filters. And even before you replace the filters, you start at the fuel tank to make sure that you can draw fuel. And I'm going to cover this on my boat because right now I don't have an anti-siphon valve installed. I've got a fuel tank that's fairly new. But the problems that happen with the fuel tanks is the fuel pickup tube develops pinhole leaks in it, and some of the tanks the fuel pickup tube is replaceable. And if you try to drink fuel out of a fuel tank, it's like trying to drink through a straw that has holes in it. So you can't draw fuel. And if you can't draw fuel, you're going to be drawing fuel and air, and you're going to have problems with your fuel delivery system. And a lot of people run right out and buy a new fuel pump. But on my boat, number one, you want to keep fresh, uncontaminated fuel. So from time to time I use a electric fuel pump that's fused and ignition protected, and I draw fuel out of the tank and I use the fuel in my farm equipment because it's easier for me to deal with contaminated fuel in my lawn tractor, and I'm always needing fuel to cut the grass. So anyway, let's call this a video log, and you got the date and time on the timestamp, and you got my name. Any questions you can post here to in the comments section, or you can shoot me an email. My last name is Sytsma, S-Y-T-S-M-A. My first name is Dennis, so my email is sytsmad@bellsouth.net. And that's going to be retired pretty soon and going to be replaced with a new email, which is going to be Dennis or sytsmad@att.net. And I'm not sure when that's going to go live. I have to email myself from time to time to see if I'm getting it or not. But that was from technical support at AT&T. They were telling me they're planning to retire the Bell Souths and replace them with att.net. And for some duration we'll be able to get email that way. But anyway, we'll go to the boat in the next segment and I'll show you the fuel pickup area. This is a 1989 boat, a Beretta Success 200, a 20-foot classic bow rider that I'm lovingly restoring, and I'm removing all the wood in the boat and replacing with high-tech cores such as H80 Divinycell 1-inch and also Blue Water 26 half-inch Coosa board. And I had the engine box that I built out of a combination of the two. I did it first in Coosa board because it's kind of like plywood, and I made a nice cabinet and I got everything spec'd out and measured, and I've got another video production on that I did that's posted on my YouTube channel. And any of my videos you can find by just putting in my name, Dennis Sytsma, D-E-N-N, 2 N's, I-S, Sytsma, which is a Dutch name from Friesland, Holland, S-Y-T-S-M-A, and you can find all my video productions, and I have playlists, and one of them of course is power boat restoration. But I like a book by Captain Wayne Canning. He made a book that's very inexpensive. I think it's $11 on Amazon or Simon & Schuster, or 1,000 different places you can buy the book. But he wrote a book that's excellent. A lot of good tips for anybody looking to buy a used power boat and restore it, or just to buy a used powerboat, find out what to avoid and what to check out, more than I can talk about, because Wayne is quite a well-known marine surveyor in the marine. He writes articles for a lot of different publications, and he's quite well respected. So $11 for a book from an expert like that is well worth it. And here in South Florida we have a lot of VIPs, and I try to go to the boat shows and talk to all the industry people at the Miami and Fort Lauderdale boat shows. But right now we're in the middle of the China virus. I think they call it COVID-19, or virus has got too many names. I mean, I knew Hong Kong flu was H1N1 and the swine flu, and now we got this flu, or this virus, and everybody's fighting about what to call it. So don't fight with me. I call it China virus because I can't remember Wuhan. I don't know. Anyway, let's stick to boats. And if you disagree with anything I say, you can post a comment. You can send me an email. You know, everybody has a right to build their own powerboat or rebuild it. In this case, I'm trying to do the best job I can. I'm looking for some vendors to help me with some of the finer points with the aesthetics. Aesthetics? Yeah. Because I got most of the real hardware issues done. The engine rebuild was done by Hialeah Engine Rebuilders. Herco, H-E-R-C-O, Herco, and they're off Okeechobee Road, if they're still there. They did the rebuild for me in 2006, and I think I only have 100 hours on the engine. The boat spends more time on the trailer and being worked on than on the water, but that's because I used to use the boat all the time when my kids were young and my father was alive. But you know, the kids are grown and gone, and the father passed away, and the wife goes with me sometimes on a real nice day, if the boat's up to it, and we're up to it. But I'm lovingly restoring this boat because there's a backstory to why, but I won't bore you with it. Anyway, we're going to go on to the fuel delivery and contamination. The biggest problem is people don't keep fresh fuel in their boat, and they don't pump it out when it gets stale. That's number one. So we're going to cover that. And they don't change the filters because they don't realize filters clog or get contaminated. And filters are very easy to change and inexpensive, and fuel is easy to pump out and use it or dispose of it properly, environmentally safe. There's companies that'll help you repurpose or dispose of contaminated fuel. I try to be environmentally friendly with everything I do. I'm not crazy about environmental protection, but I like to do what's best practice, like the pros would do, the professionals. Again, I'm a do-it-yourself enthusiast, and I do it not because I'm cheap, because I like to save money. I'm thrifty, and I like the quality of my own work. I use the professionals from time to time, but even the pros make mistakes, and I end up having to pay twice. If you're dealing with good shops, they'll cover it for you. You bring it back and tell them what the problem is, and they take care of it. And that's how I find who the good shops are, and I've had pretty good luck. Most of the shops do pretty good work that I've had done. Like my stern drive, I take it and have it serviced to change the impeller and the housing every year. But a lot of the work I do myself because I like my own work, and I like staying on top of the you know, I really don't want it to break down when I've got company on the boat, and when I have a good nice day on the water. I don't like being towed in. So I try to do as much as I can, make sure it's in really good shape before I even take it off the trailer. And keeping up with all the safety equipment is a chore, between the flares and the fire extinguisher and the medical kit, and I mean everything you need to have on board. Make sure your ankle line is in good shape, your dock lines are in good shape. A lot of little things you have to stay on top of all the time with a powerboat, or suffer the consequences. And the consequences could be dire or expensive. I've seen a lot of accidents in South Florida when people are trying to have a good time, and that's sad. People get hurt, sometimes even killed. I was in the hospital once with somebody that got run over by their own boat and cut up pretty bad by the prop when I was a teenager. I'm not sure what they hit, but there's a lot of floating debris, there's logs in the water, there's telephone poles, there's lumber, even to full-blown cargo containers you can run into if you're going fast at night. And these guys hit something, and it's great to have a kill switch, because if the operator falls away from the controls, you don't want the thing going in a circle and cutting you up when you're in the water and helpless, to try to get away from a powerboat that's going crazy and going in circles, because that's usually what happens, is they fall over to one side and they go in circles until somebody's brave enough to try to stop it, and that's very dangerous. So use your kill switch, use your lanyard. I saw some new things where they have a Bluetooth thing on the lanyard where if you're within proximity, it works the same as the lanyard. But I like the idea of a lanyard. I know that's going to work. And usually the kill switch is right in series with your ignition switch. So it's pretty simple, and if your switch is tripped, you'll see 0 voltage on the gauge. So safety first. I'm a big advocate of training courses that are available online for marine powerboat safety, and of course the U.S. Coast Guard and U.S. Power Squadrons, depending on where you live. And I think a lot of things are being done online now, but you can never have too much safety training. And first aid. The federal agency I work for, I got both, because I had to operate a powerboat for one of the FAA facilities I worked out in Biscayne Bay. I've got a lot of experience on the water from when I was very young. My family always had boats, power boats. My oldest child, who's an aerospace engineer, he's had a series of sailboats, all of them with power of one type or another, from an outboard to the last boat that he had was a 38-foot Pearson, really nice sailboat. But I don't know how to sail. I'm a powerboat guy. I haven't learned how to sail yet. I may take some courses. Anyway, the main problem with most powerboats is contaminated fuel, low fuel volume, which is not to be confused with low fuel pressure. You can have ample pressure and not have the volume. And there's plenty of other videos on the internet that can explain fuel volume versus fuel pressure. But in this video log, I'm going to try to talk about a few of those things in the future video segments. And sorry this intro was so long, but please smash the like button and subscribe if you want, and forward the video and share it with other. I'm also active on 2 different groups, actually more than 2, but one I'm the admin, which is the 3.7 liter Mercruiser, which is 3.7L Mercruiser on Facebook. And don't argue with me about what a lousy engine the 3.7 is. It's a wonderful engine, but you have to do the aftermarket improvements. CDI Electronics in Huntsville, Alabama does some great stuff for the 3.7. There's other people that do great stuff, you know, and Mercruiser put out all kinds of service bulletins that even the professional shops haven't kept up with. So they don't know, they just say it's lousy. So, nah, I've heard it all. And the 3.7 is a wonderful engine if it's properly maintained and if you do everything in the Mercruiser service bulletins and the Mercruiser service manual, which is mainly maintenance, and following the recommendation by Bar and the other exhaust manifold makers, which most people argue with me. They don't like what Bar says. But hey, if you're in salt water and you're running your risers and your seawater elbows or your exhaust manifolds more than 5 years without replacing them, you're taking a risk. And it's up to you how thick your wallet is and how much you are going to risk if you blow an engine or ingest water into the engine and you don't maintain your flappers. And you get into a following sea and the water comes into your engine, and next thing you know, you got not only a bent rod or rods, but you also break the nose off the starter because you try to crank it when there's water in the engine. And you don't know because you don't know. And there's some catastrophic failures if you don't maintain a stern drive properly. And one of the most important things about stern drive operation is no sudden starts, no sudden stops. Yeah, I know it's fun to cowboy, but don't do it on a stern drive. Because if you do a sudden start, not only is it more stress and strain on the rods and the journals and all that, but you're not giving people time to get out of the way, and that's a safety issue. Because if you power up slow, they hear your engine coming up and they see your vessel gaining speed, and they have time not only for boaters but marine life to get out of the way. I hate to hit a manatee with a powerboat or a sea turtle or any other marine life because they're trying to live too. So no sudden starts, no sudden stops, because in a following sea the water comes up the leg, and if your flappers are good, it stops there. But if your flappers are not good and the flappers fail, they don't have a great service life. Like once a year, every season you should be changing the coolant and the flappers. Every season. Every year, guys. And if you're not doing that, then you're putting yourself at jeopardy and you could suffer consequences. The same thing with batteries. If you got batteries that are no good or weak, you need to top them off with a battery charger. Don't trust everything on the boat to keep your batteries up. You need to top them off. And if your batteries are weak or failing, replace them. Because the electrical system on power boats it's not like your automobile where you have a 100, 200 amp alternator. Most power boats are designed for minimal demand. 40 amps, maybe 60 amps. I mean, outboard motors, the same thing too. The older outboards don't have high capacity. The newer outboards do. So, slowly marine standards are coming up to automotive standards. But still, buy a battery tender and top off your all this stuff is maintenance. And it's all common sense. So anyway, please like, share, and subscribe. Next video we'll go out to the boat. And I did this segment first indoors because we've got a lot of noise outdoors from airplanes. I'm near an airport and the birds like to sing, and I don't know why, but my camera really picks that up. And other distractions such as horns honking and what have you. So Dennis Seatsma, Homestead, Florida. I hope you enjoy my video productions, and we'll go on to the next segment outdoors as soon as I pause the camera. Hit pause, Dennis. Dennis, hit pause.